Hello, welcome everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, all our participants around the world. Welcome to Going Organic webinar series. This is our fourth webinar series just before the last one for winding down for the spring semester. I am Dil Thavaraja, professor in the Pulse and Quality Nutritional Breeding Program at the Plant and Environment Sciences. I oversee the organic nutritional breeding program for pulse crops. And the program is funded by, I first wanted to acknowledge our funders, USDA National Institute of Food and Agriculture, NIFA OREI, and USAID Feed the Future, South Carolina Department of Ag, Good Food Institute, actually Global FoodShot, and the USDA ARS. I'm sorry, our FoodShot logo is not here, but they have been quite a bit of supporters for my breeding program. And today, it's my great honor to introduce you our guest speaker, Miss Sara Eckhouse. She is the Executive Director of Global FoodShot Global. And I'm very honored because I am one of the recipients of their program. And Ms. Eckhouse is Executive Director of the FoodShot Global. It's a collaborative platform for inventors, industry leaders. And with that, they have more than $500,000 groundbreaker prizes. And we will hear more about that, their program from Ms. House's talk. But her previous career is very, very interesting. Sara worked as a consultant executive director of S2G Ventures, and where she provided insight over 300 portfolios and the different companies. And also she was the senior advisor to the Secretary Tom Vilsack at the USDA. That is very, very cool job for the global food security and the American agriculture, also organic agriculture. She's a great advocate for the organic program. Also, most important, she worked in the Obama administration, White House, in the Office of Legislative Affairs. So she has been working with the policies, a great big advocate for our programs, plant breeding, nutrition, food security. So with that, I would like Sara to take the leadership and give us your experience. Thank you so much for coming today.
Well, thanks so much for having me, Dill. It's really exciting to be here, and congratulations to Dill for all of the work that she's doing to support and advance organic and sustainable agriculture. What I'm going to do today is talk some about FoodShot Global and our approach to some of the biggest food systems challenges. And then I'm happy to talk some also and answer questions about organic agriculture. I think it's a really interesting time for organic agriculture when you have this kind of growth in regenerative, or however you want to define that, which is one of the problems, of course, is it's not defined. And is if that's whether that's a competitor to organic, or can it be, complementary to organic? And then I think it's also an interesting time in terms of climate change and how people are approaching organic agriculture when it comes to climate change, yields, inputs, land use, and some of the USDA programs related to climate smart commodities and how organic fits into that. So
you want to share your screen, please?
Yes, I'm going to. I just wanted to kind of give an update of what I'm going to talk about, but I'm going to start with talking just about FoodShot and how we approach things. All right. So FoodShot Global, our mantra is moonshots for better food. And we really take the approach that the the food system actually works as it was designed to work, which is to produce huge amounts of commodities at a low cost. And that has had a huge number of unintended consequences in terms of biodiversity, soil health, water quality, pollution, and diet, frankly. And so we really need to transform that food system. And we see the real need for different types of investment, different and new types of collaborative partnerships in order to do that. So we're working to empower bold ideas and innovative companies to accelerate the transformation to a healthy, sustainable, and equitable food systems. We've been around since 2018, and the founder of FoodShot actually came out of the venture capital system and saw that as a good avenue for, you know, being able to do impact investing in transforming food systems, but that there was a need for more collaboration and maybe a more targeted approach, especially when it comes to some of the largest challenges facing the planet and our food systems and human health. So we have three kind of priorities that we organize ourselves around: food that's healthy, food that's sustainable, and food that's equitable. And we put together frameworks that we call our food shots, and that kind of outline how we approach these kind of key leverage points for transforming food systems. So um, we try to be kind of nuanced and holistic and systemic in our approach. Um, for example, when we launched our protein food shot, we did not say it all has to be plant based. It all has to be, um, you know, we can't have animal agriculture. We didn't think that was realistic, and we didn't think that that was going to be an effective way to approach the challenges of protein production. Instead, we thought about what is the goal of protein production in terms of nutrient availability, and this is where Dill's work is really valuable. And so we saw the need for, investment in approaches that are increasing nutrient digestibility and bioavailability in crops, but also to things like that are improving the sustainability of animal agriculture. When we talk about sustainable food, we are not exclusively organic, but we would certainly include organic in that. And we are looking certainly at the types of production that minimize uh, the types of inputs that are often not used in organic production. We're looking, to reduce chemical and synthetic ingredients. So this is a list of our partners. You can see we work with a wide variety of partners, from foundations to large corporates to universities, investors, um, nonprofits. And this is really about making sure that we have a diversity of contributors, and we can provide not only different types of capital, but also different types of other assistance beyond capital in terms of networking and connections and resources to help our innovators and companies be successful, even beyond the financial support that we provide. So this is the way we've organized ourselves around this capital platform. Is that we see the need for different types of capital depending on the stage of an innovation. But whereas a venture fund, where our founder previously worked, is only providing equity investment in for-profit ventures, we see also the need for prize funding, which is non-dilutive and can really help get an idea out of the lab and into the market. So often, there are some innovations or, really promising technologies that can get stuck in universities or are unable to transfer to the market because there's not that initial investment of capital that could, be non-dilutive and can help the entrepreneur or the innovator bring that forward as a viable business. And so that's why we created the Groundbreaker Prize, which is really for those early stage entrepreneurs, researchers, and also my background at USDA. I see the importance of public policy and engagement as a really key element in food system transformation, which you often don't see funding for. And so, if the incentives don't align with the technology and the innovation, oftentimes the technology and innovation won't be adopted. And so you can have all the greatest technology in the world, but if the incentives are structured so that the status quo is better for farmers' bottom line, they may not be able to implement the new technology or bring it into their operations. So it's really important that we think again, FoodShot is really a systems thinking organization. So we are really trying to approach these challenges in a systemic way that includes policy. So this is just a little bit about the Groundbreaker Prize, and the function of it as catalytic capital to really drive innovation a uh, in a new way, in a way that is often hard for entrepreneurs to access. And the way we designed it also was to make sure that we had um, kind of almost like a MacArthur style prize where there's a lot of freedom for the awardee and how they want to use the prize. And so we want to provide that flexibility to the recipients. I am not looking at the chat, but if there are questions, feel free to interrupt me uh, directly. Um, okay, so there we go. The way we operate is that we kind of identify specific challenges or food shots and we put together the frameworks. We go out and publicize those frameworks and share kind of the types of innovations and solutions that we're looking for. We attract a large number of applications and nominations from around the world. And then we have a vetting and selection process. We work with our venture partners on the equity side, and then we have an internal selection committee um, for the prize that we have been able to award it. This is just kind of a summary of what we've done so far. I think it's, pretty exciting for a relatively young organization. In just we're currently on our fourth food shot right now. And we received, applications from around the world. We've supported 10 prize winners with over $1.5 million. And our finalists, so even companies that didn't receive direct investment from food shop partners have really gone on to be very successful. And we've been able to help and support some of those finalists just through, providing them with the types of networks and connections that can help them raise those funds in the future. Okay. So our first, I want to kind of go through the way we have kind of structured our different food shots and the awardees, because I think our portfolio is a really exciting group, including Dill, of course, and other scientists from around the country. So our first framework was focused on soil. And really, obviously there's a strong connection with organic agriculture and soil health. We again were the exclusive to organic, but we saw a lot of value in organic agriculture as it relates to soil health. And our approach was really, what are the strategies and approaches to soil health that can increase nutrient density and bioavailability, that can increase farmer profitability, and that can increase ecosystem health and reduce damage to natural resources. So we've had a number of equity awards and prize awardees on the equity side in our first year. So that was 2018. Trace Genomics received an investment from two of our partners, both S2G Ventures and Grantham Foundation, and they are doing really interesting work. There's so much that we still don't know about soil, so they're really doing kind of microbiome, um, genetic and genomic uh, um, database, basically, so that you can understand what the microbiome is really going, what is composed of, and how it's impacted by various inputs. And, it's enabling a much more precise understanding of what's happening in the soil and how different inputs, including biological inputs, are affecting the soil health. Um, we also had and the way we organized ourselves is through these long-term commitments. So we had our first inaugural year of soil, and then we continued to award um soil support to soil research and innovators even after that first year. So the first year we also had Gerlinda de Dane out of the Wageningen University in the Netherlands, who's doing really exciting work on the soil microbiome, roots, and fermentation with a kind of traditional drink that's consumed in Zambia, and gaining a really mechanistic understanding of plant soil interactions and their feedback to ecosystem functioning. And so that's really, some fundamental science, but it's essential to understanding the how the soil and the soil microbiome affect nutrient cycles. And if we're talking about using soil as which a lot of people are now talking about using soil as a carbon sequestration to offset climate change, that's really important that we understand how those cycles actually work. And there's still a lot of questions there. And I have some concerns, I would say, about, using soil carbon sequestration as a reliable offset for carbon emissions. We also awarded a prize to Keith Paustian in that first cycle, who's developed the Comet Farm model, and has really pioneered modeling to kind of identify the greenhouse gas emission implications of various conservation practices. And that's been used very broadly, including by the USDA Climate Smart Commodity Funds. And then we awarded also a prize in that first year to Doran Cox at the Open Technology Ecosystem for Agricultural Management, which is a really exciting open source uh, tool that can help farmers understand site-specific agricultural knowledge and support improved soil health with interoperable tools. Subsequently, we awarded prizes focused on soil. So this was after the first year to Caillou Guan at the University of Illinois, who's doing really important work on monitoring, reporting, and verification related to soil health. And using kind of a system of systems that includes both on the ground, monitoring, and also AI, remote satellite data that they're collecting. It's going to be very important for Scope 3 emissions. We also awarded funding to Keith Shepard, who is working in Kenya with the Innovative Solutions for Decision Agriculture, which is providing, low cost uh, tools for soil measurement, not necessarily focused on carbon, but on other key soil health parameters and functional properties, and making that easily accessible to smallholder farms in the global south, which is really important. And then we also awarded some funding to Samuel Rigu, whose business in Kenya is using field residues to create biochar in kind of a mobile modular tool that can be used to support soil health and again for smallholder farms. So that's our soil portfolio. We have and these are just some images and kind of I think it's really important to tell the stories, and I'm very proud that our portfolio represents farmers from all over the world doing projects at all different scales and the kind of full diversity of agriculture. When it came to protein, our approach, as I mentioned earlier, was really to look at innovation across different protein sectors and not be kind of dogmatic about, plant versus animal protein, but to acknowledge that, we need to find ways to make animal protein production less damaging to the environment. And we need to find ways to improve plant protein availability and nutritional value, and to use alternative and novel forms of protein like precision fermentation, and potentially cell-based meat, although we didn't identify an awardee in that area, but that there are innovations being made in all of these fields that we need to support if we're going to reach the climate goals and also the SDG goals around nutrition and child and maternal health. So this is where we have Dill, of course, and the award that she received, which we were really thrilled about her work and uh, the way her plant breeding program is creating new varietals and new cultivars that have improved amino acid profiles, improved digestibility, and improved food functional properties, and including the way that she's been able to find ways to process those proteins from legumes and pulses in a way that retains the protein structure and doesn't kind of have some of the denaturing impact that we knew can happen with some of the high heat and high pressure extrusion techniques. Um, then we also awarded a prize to Hannah Van Zanten, who's really doing fascinating modeling work on the circular economy and identifying kind of ideal land use options under a variety of conditions to meet nutritional and planetary needs. And so that means considering, if you are doing an insect feed operation, where's the energy coming from for these operations, right? Like how, what is because if it's coming from coal, your improved greenhouse gas profile might not actually be so much better. So we really need to, be thoughtful and holistic in how we're approaching these issues. I think it's very clear that moving to away from animal agriculture does have um, greenhouse gas emission benefits, but moving to a monocrop soy operation might not be great for biodiversity. And so, what are the trade-offs that we're looking at? And I think this comes. This is really important when we're thinking about organic agriculture too, because a lot of the time people will say, well, organic agriculture has lower yields or, it it doesn't actually reduce greenhouse gas emissions because you have to use more land to grow the same equivalent amount of food. That is part of the conversation, but we also need to have a conversation of about what we're actually growing, right? So are we growing nutrient dense crops, or are we growing corn and soybeans for cattle? And are we growing, growing organic corn and organic soy to feed cows might not be the best use of organic agriculture. Um, or growing, of course, we dedicate huge amounts of land now to ethanol. And so I think these are the types of trade offs that we need to think about. And it's not a simple fix of saying, oh, everybody should transition to organic and that'll solve the problem. Let's support people transitioning to organic and include a focus on dietary change, so that we are moving away from some of the land intensive uh, crops and dietary patterns that make it so that, any reduction in yields really causes a problem. We also saw a couple of investments on the protein side that were very exciting. Um, Again, one was in this kind of novel protein area, around carbon, making protein from carbon dioxide, and they're using that primarily for uh, fish feed. And then also the one on the animal agriculture side that's doing digital virtual fencing for livestock management, which can support rotational grazing and improved animal health. Okay. These are some of the folks that we've awarded through the protein, and our final, most recent prize, which was Bioactive Foods, which really looked at the food health nexus and how foods can be a medium for both improved, both preventative and therapeutic health. And so we see, sorry, got a little ahead of myself. Um, you know, this goes back to, again, things like organic. For me, it means things like organic agriculture, where we're reducing the presence of toxic and synthetic chemicals in the food system, and also how we can provide higher levels of nutrient dense food to people, especially low income people. And so here we had two prize winners, Josh Troutwine and Dr. Whale, while at the University of Maryland. And then also a an equity investment with Digestiva that's doing really interesting work with enzymes that can, in some ways, is very complementary to Dill's work in terms of uh, increasing the ability of the body to process proteins and to absorb the protein from, especially from, things that products like plants that sometimes are harder to digest those proteins, and especially when you're thinking about older people or younger people who need higher protein levels in their diet. Um, Dr. Weil's work is really fascinating to me because I think it brings together the kind of soil, protein, and bioactive foods aspects. So this is looking at sulfur deficient soils and how, uh, because those soils are sulfur deficient, crops grown in them are deficient in two essential amino acids, cysteine and methionine. And if you can increase soil sulfur levels, which is a fairly straightforward approach, you can use gypsum or ash spread on a field, that you can improve the uh, amino acid profile of the crops in those grown in those fields, and that improves the nutritional value to people who are eating those crops. And so he's doing some really interesting work with that in Malawi and I think Tanzania. So that's an exciting project. And then on the kind of food access side, which I think is also really important, and when we're talking about equitable food systems, is absolutely essential. Josh Troutwine is working to, facilitate access to healthy foods and increase access to healthy foods for low income consumers, through kind of an easy debit card system that is also being used to, support the types of produce incentive and produce prescription programs, and also other kind of medically tailored diets that health insurance companies and others are now exploring to improve health and reduce the prevalence of metabolic disease. Our current food shot that we are just wrapping up the selection process for is focused on water, and both kind of the water as an essential input, and looking both at the aquatic food side of water and the water scarcity and water quality side of water. And so again, this goes back. I know organic agriculture, of course, there's water quality is certainly an important component of that. And so it's really, looking at how we can reduce the presence of, again, synthetic chemicals in our water supply. I personally grew up in Iowa, which has a huge problem with nitrates and nitrites in the water supply. And that's really an increasing problem around the country. So that's something certainly that we're interested in. Also, how we can improve the sustainability, reduce overfishing, and improve the sustainability of water use around the country. And, this is one of those areas where you see, the kind of, again, well, using valuable land to grow crops that are very water intensive, that are then being used for animal feed, um, is really where we need to think about. We have limited resources. How are we using them efficiently and effectively? And what are the, again, this goes back to policy somewhat. What are the changes we need to make in terms of how we value and prioritize conservation versus, um, just allowing businesses to use whatever resources they can access. So again, we're trying to take a very holistic view of water, the impact that climate change is having on water, as there's an increased um, level of dramatic precipitation events, droughts, floods. I don't know if any of you saw the images of the floods recently in Abu Dhabi and Oman, but it's really, quite shocking. And I'm sure wherever you are in the country or in the world, you have likely experienced some of these extreme precipitation events in the last few years. Um, and this is another one where soil health really is essential to thinking about water, because, as I'm sure you all know, healthier soil has better water filtration rates, is more resilient in the face of these extreme uh, precipitation events. So that's very much tied in to these previous food shots. We also have some special projects that we work on, that are kind of, again, looking systemically. This is a project we're working on for prediabetes, where we're trying to integrate with an employer and a health insurer, and the kind of food environment to reduce the prevalence of prediabetes through dietary intervention. And that's something we're working with a number of partners to get off the ground. Um, and, moving forward, we're going to continue looking at the types of kind of systemic levers in the food system that we see as providing a lot of uh, impact when we're looking to transform the food system. So, the microbiome is obviously something that's very exciting, and it has a real connection, again, between human health, soil health, um, and all of these kind of different systems that we look at. I think radical food transparency, it is very interesting, especially when you have all of these claims now that are being made around regenerative, carbon friendly, climate friendly, sustainable. How are we making sure that there's that these have claims have integrity? And I think this also goes to the issue of, reducing toxins in the food system. So, and then food waste is a perennial issue, but I think there are a lot of folks who do food waste really well. So it's not something that we have really felt like we needed to take on. Um, but it's an area, of course, that has implications for climate change and hunger and sustainability. And then kind of the food secure cities, which I think food chain resiliency overall became much more relevant in light of COVID, where there seemed to be so many supply chain disruptions. And we saw the way that, again, the food system that has been designed to be um, large and efficient, and produce at scale, actually lost some resiliency along the way. Um, and then, we have various partnership ways that we partner with, again, universities, NGOs, various organizations. Um, and this is the kind of key team. We also have usually a fellow from UC Davis who works with us, that we've had a number of different fellows who we've been able to support and kind of through an internship process. And it's been an exciting opportunity to really dive deep into a lot of these critical issues in the in our food systems, and support some of the most exciting innovation that's happening that could really put us in a better place as a planet, as in our environment, in our human health, and in terms of the equity in our food system. So that's kind of the end of the slideshow. I will stop sharing my screen. Um,
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much for wonderful presentation. And you gave us like so many things to think about. And I'm really grateful that you're doing this global food shot innovative prices, and that changed actually our world into going from small to large, and we can come up with a lot of innovative ideas. And thank you for all the work you do. There's a lot of questions coming, comments, and so I will go one by one because we have 5 minutes to answer all those questions. But most of them are comments too, and very valuable discussion going. Um, so the first thing I wanted to ask about, Sarah, um, the food shot that have been doing for I think for the last 5 years, that you guys have been doing 3 major calls. What is your call on the food waste?
so we haven't put one out on food waste, and I don't know if we will, again, just because there are a lot of organizations. There's Refed, and there are, even a lot of government initiatives to tackle food waste. So we have tried in our food shots to take on issues that maybe weren't getting as much attention. So, when we launched our soil food shot in 2018, that was kind of before everybody was talking about soil as this, incredible climate change solution. It was, certainly before you had such a big focus on it within USDA and within a lot of kind of government and policy places. And it was before there was so much funding going to it. So I think we have tried to, again, take an approach where we're bringing something new to the conversation, not just kind of duplicating what other people are doing.
Yeah, that makes sense. Do you think we're doing all these things like people in like in the federal government? I know some NGOs, they all want to work on the food waste. Are we actually improving ourselves to reduce the waste? Do you have any kind of thoughts on that?
I mean, I think the data shows that we haven't done a very good job of reducing food waste. So, um, but I think that there have been, maybe specific projects that have been more successful. It's not something that I'm an expert in, but um, I think there certainly is a lot more work to be done. And part of the challenge in the US is that a lot of the food waste comes at the consumer level, and it's very difficult to change consumer behavior. Um, I think there potentially is more that can be done uh, in the pre-consumer level within supply chains to reduce food waste, and that's more of a problem in the global south and places where they have maybe struggle with cold chain or processing capacity that can allow that leads to more food loss rather than food waste. So there's a different, food loss is kind of the pre uh, consumer chain, and food waste is what we throw away. As
Yeah, I see that. And thank you so much for answering that very honestly. So that's how I feel too. So thank you so much. There's a lot of comments going on in the chat. So let's get a question from Jennifer. Jennifer is the instructor, horticulture, medicinal plants at LSU. Hello, Jennifer. So her comments were a lot of detailed comments, but one of the questions that she was thinking, um, how we connect. There are many plants that help with the inflammatory diseases and diabetes. Also, education about medicinal plants and edible native plants. So, is this kind of a direction the food chart can go on?
Yeah, I think that's definitely something within the bioactive foods that we were looking at, and trying to um that goes again to where different foods and plants can be used both therapeutically and preventatively with medicine. There's a lot of interesting stuff happening with precision food and precision diets you know in prescriptive diets. My personal sense is that the largest bang for your buck in terms of um, improving health for millions and potentially billions of people is not to have kind of this, individualized diet, but to get broadly everybody eating more fruits and vegetables, and having access to the kind of healthy foods, the whole foods basically that we know are good for health, more fiber, more produce, less processed food. There, I think there's a lot of really interesting work, where you can track your glucose levels for every individual food. And for some people that might be a worthwhile investment, but in terms of um, you know, broadly reducing the prevalence of metabolic disease, I think we are better off focusing on improving access, improving affordability, and improving kind of accessibility, uh, and supporting people in making those healthier decisions.
I am totally 100% with you. This is part of things that we're thinking in our program too, because it is organic breeding and like what you're saying, I totally agree with you. Our last minute, one question I'm going to take it from the audience. Um, this is from,
I
uh,
can stay on a little longer, but I understand if you guys have time constraints. So
so this question is about think, what are you thinking about processing of organic products? If we use novel processing techniques such as microwave drying, are they still organic? That's kind of regular theory question that you can answer and then I can.
yeah. Well, I mean, so the great thing about the organic program is that it is a regulated, official program. There are rules and standards that are enforced and implemented by USDA. And um, so if there's a novel processing or, you know, input that people want to consider for organic production, you can have USDA can look at it and have a rulemaking process that allows for public input and consider it. There's a lot of debate about whether hydroponic uh, growing is can be organic because it doesn't have soil, right? But the hydroponic people would argue, well, we are not using any of the prohibited substances and we are complying with all of the requirements of the organic program. You know, it's a little bit of a philosophical question. My personal view is that we need all of the tools possible in order to make the you know, reduce damage to the environment and provide quality nutritional to as many people as we can. And so I don't want to block off tools to just to say something is organic or not, you know? So I'm happy to eat food that's not organic if I know it's produced in a sustainable way. The great thing about the organic label is it actually means something, whereas so many other claims about sustainability have no regulated meaning and are not defined anywhere. So all of these processing uh, potentials, I think that's something that the National Organic Standards Board can consider and National Organic Program can consider, and people can have an option to weigh in. Um, and I'm not a scientist, so I don't know enough about those specific processes. Um, but if they make it easier to preserve food and preserve nutritional value, I don't think we should, uh, be overly orthodox or dogmatic in terms of not accepting the types of new innovation that can actually help us achieve our goals. Like we need to consider what is the actual goal, which is I think to reduce the persistence of synthetic chemicals, improve soil health, improve ecosystem resilience, improve human health.
Yeah.
Mm.
100% agree. Actually, Clemson University has an organic certification program run by authorities. So, like my program has our certificate. Like we are very concerned about what chemicals we use. We don't use any chemicals. So our grading program is 100% pure organic. And then when we do the processing side, we always go to the our certificate program. People, if we don't know the questions, clean the equipments and in between. So we try to
Yeah,
honor our USDA labels. So
absolutely. No, it's very important. And, I think that is one of the reasons that the organic label does actually have trust from consumers, whereas labels like natural, nobody, most people know that natural doesn't really mean anything anymore because
exactly.
it's not at all regulated. And I worry the same thing will happen with regenerative, where it comes to be a meaningless claim that is just, marketing for large corporations.
So today we had a really nice discussion open, and I'm really grateful to you, Sarah, to open up and talk about these issues to save our world, to have a better food for human, all this diseases, diabetes, and non-communicable diseases as well as the inflammatory diseases. So this is a great avenue for us to talk about, create new research ideas. That's why this idea of this organic platform. So I invite all these key people and tell our issues and talk about it. And our next speaker, that would be wonderful. Next speaker would be really, really like Sarah, and I met Dr. Clayton through Good Food Institute, one of the wonderful places that appreciate on organic plant-based food and she's going to talk about their philosophy, platform, and I hope most of you have questions on organics. And here is another expert that we are bringing our last seminar for the spring, Dr. Clayton. So I hope to see you all on May 15th. Thank you so much. Have a
Thank you so
wonderful day.
much, everyone. Bye.
Bye.